On this episode of Comics and Controllers, we talk about the new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer and how it now looks like an awesome movie. We also talk about the casting news for the new Fantastic Four, which now looks like a terrible movie. We then also talk about how Irrational Studios, the ones that make Spider-Shock, is closing down. All that and more on this, episode 11, Irrationally Fantastic. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Comics and Controllers. As always, I'm Kyle, joined by my co-host, Steven.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good, Steven. So this week, we want to talk about something we've talked about before, but there's some new ones out. We want to talk about comic book movies. We want to talk about some trailers that have come out, also talk about some new casting that we've heard for some of these movies.
I do love me some comic book movies.
So, do we want to talk about the trailer, or do we want to talk about the casting news first?
I actually think we should talk about the trailer first, because that's something that I had one opinion on before the trailer came out. Thought I wasn't going to be interested at all.
Yeah. So
my mind has been changed.
So yeah, we're talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer that was just released. I think it was released during Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show.
That's correct.
Like on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week.
Right.
I'm just going to say I told you it's going to look awesome, and I was right.
I have to agree. I will say that we might be jumping the gun a little bit here, and I'm going to tell you why. This is a 15-second trailer. I mean, it is literally a 15-second spot.
It's longer than that, but it's short. It's not a full trailer.
Right. It is a teaser trailer. I mean, that's according to the Jimmy Fallon website, which I don't know how reputable that would be, but according to the website that they advertised it, it was a 15-second teaser. And I think the 15 seconds is when you cut off the intro and all that.
Maybe.
But I really liked it. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It's only, it's a very short trailer. It's well worth the time.
It shows a lot of people who are in it that I didn't know were in it.
Yes. Like,
I didn't know John C. Reilly was in it.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a big role or anything, but he was in there.
He's the Nova Corps dude. He's the guy, I can't think of his name, but he eventually gives Nova his stuff. When he dies in the comics, he gives Nova all his gear. But he's in it. A lot of people have been taking this trailer and breaking it down, really slowing the footage down and getting individual screen caps. There looks like Ronan the Accuser's in there.
Yeah.
Of course, you have Benicio del Toro as the Collector, who's one of your bad guys.
Yep.
The blue chick, who was a Doctor Who companion. She was Amy Pond.
Nebula is who she's playing.
Yes, Nebula, yeah. They look like they're kind of rounding up most of the bad guys. There's still, of course, the rumors that Thanos is going to pop up.
Well, yeah, and I would expect that to hint or him to possibly be in there some way, because Nebula is like his niece, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Isn't Gamora his adopted daughter?
I don't know. So a great thing about that is that, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, there's a Guardians of the Galaxy prior to this iteration of it. Like, I think this is technically Volume 3 that they're going on in the comics.
I think you're correct.
And the second volume was still basically the same group. It's just they kind of stopped the series and restarted it, like Marvel likes to do. But the first Guardians of the Galaxy was like all the people who had Infinity Gems, if I remember correctly, like
it was
Gamora,
Adam Warlock.
Adam Warlock, Thanos, Drax, Pip the Troll, all these people who most people now are like, who?
Pip the Troll was recently in X Factor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Digging the bottom of the barrel there, aren't they? But
you know Peter David, he likes his random characters.
Yeah. But also in the movie supposed to be Glenn Close plays Nova Prime, who's like, I guess she's the leader of the Nova Corps, yeah. Right. But
Michael Rooker's in it too.
Yeah, Michael Rooker's in it. He plays like I think his character was somebody from the comics, but I don't remember who.
He's a Kree warrior. I can't remember his name. He's technically a good guy in the comics, but I'm not sure how they'll use him in I just assume when Michael Rooker pops up on screen, he's a bad guy until proven otherwise.
That's probably a safe bet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the trailer to me, like, there's a lot of action. It looks like it's gonna be kind of funny too. There's a lot of comedy in it. So,
for anybody who doesn't know, this comic, the third volume is probably the darkest version of Guardians of the Galaxy, but they have always had some level of kind of snarky comedy in it. And if you couldn't tell that by the trailer, with Star-Lord constantly trying to give the camera the finger.
Yeah, I mean, two of the main characters in it one's a raccoon and that talks, and the other one's a tree. So a
tree that only says one phrase, and they felt that they needed Vin Diesel to voice that tree.
Yeah, I saw
that for whatever reason.
I saw a interview with him, and he's talked about it feels good to bring life into a character like Groot. I was like, all you do is say Groot.
Well, okay.
What kind of life are you building? Are you breathing into this character?
In his defense, I heard that they did get him to do the motion cap for the character.
Oh,
so,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so because like there's some pictures of him on stilts doing motion cap, and they think that's what that's from. Bradley Cooper from The Hangover and Limitless and all that is doing the voice for Rocket Raccoon, and to me that seems like a really good choice. I think that'll work.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, because you said before that you weren't really looking forward to this or expecting anything of this movie. So why was that, and what changed your mind in the trailer?
The reason for that is, one, I am not a fan of Marvel's space comic stuff. I really believe that DC. I'm usually more of a Marvel supporter. I've been open about that, but DC usually does better space adventure. They have their space stuff worked out more. It makes a little bit more sense, if anything in DC makes sense. And Marvel, a lot of the time, is the same, like, 4 guys in space, fighting for supremacy. But I saw that Bendis was on the comic, and I realized, okay, well, they're putting Bendis on the comic to promote the movie. And I'm still putting money down that a few months after this movie comes out, somebody else will be on that comic. Because Bendis' run will be done. It'll be time to move him on to something else. So I didn't want to get into the comic, even though one of the writers I really liked was into it. And most of the characters I had to look up. I didn't know enough about Drax the Destroyer at first. I knew who he was kind of, but I didn't know enough about him. Looked him up and saw that they got Batista from the WWE to play him. And let me say, he looks awesome. He looks great in that trailer. And I'm a big fan of Zoe Saldana. And that is not just because the words that were used the most on Twitter after the trailer premiered were green alien side boob, but it helped. But she looks perfect for the part. She's a very good physical actress. I love a lot of the stuff she's done. I still haven't seen Colombiana, but I hear it's amazing. I need to watch that. But going up to it, I was like, well, the cast looks good, and James Gunn is the director.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing in its favor.
Plus. Yeah,
is James Gunn.
And I was just like, no, I just don't want to. I think it's going to be bad. And I think what really had to change was I had to see it. I had to see something from it. And when you get, spoiler alert for Thor: The Dark World, but when you get to the end sequence for that movie is with Benicio del Toro, with the Collector. And not only does it kind of show him, and he's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy. He looks great in that, by the way. And they had James Gunn direct that part of the movie because they wanted him, the kind of Guardians of the Galaxy feel, to be on that. And it looks a little Doctor Who-ish, like some of the sets and everything. But that feeling, and then introducing the idea of the Infinity Gems not being the stereotypical gems as we're used to them being, I think it kind of built it up. And then the trailer was just the catalyst. It was the, kind of explosion and the visual, accent that I needed to make me go, you know what? I've been keeping my expectations down a little too hard on this. This could actually be really good.
Yeah, I like Guardians of the Galaxy. The Marvel space stuff, you're right, the DC stuff tends to be better, but DC's put a lot more stock in it. And the Marvel stuff, for the most part, originally is basically copies of the DC stuff. So when they created...
Some of that is really true, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think the DC space stuff, the big parts of it are like the Green Lantern Corps, which you have the Nova Corps. Okay, they're pretty much very, this intergalactic police force. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. Power's a little bit different, but whatever. And then you have on the DC side the like people like Darkseid and all them, the new gods.
Right.
And so Marvel try to create something similar to that with the new gods by doing like the people that Thanos is one of that live on like some planet, some moon of Jupiter or Saturn or something. And it doesn't, out of all of those people, the only one anybody knows is Thanos. The rest of them, nobody even knows who they are. So
Thanos and Galactus are their two god level.
They're two big characters that everybody knows from outer space. I mean, there are other people or other things that people know who the Skrull are.
Right.
People know who the Kree are and the Shi'ar are, but it's because of other series they've appeared in, not because of anything they've done on their own.
Like, one thing I thought was recently they had the War of Kings. I say recently, it was a few years ago now. But, they even had to throw Black Bolt and his people into that to have a fourth faction, for that kind of space war. And I just think Marvel's space stuff is not developed as much as DC's is.
Seems really unfair because the Inhumans are pretty ridiculous. I mean, Black Bolt on its own is absurd.
And they had the other Summers brother,
Gabriel
Vulcan.
Southern.
Yeah,
whatever.
Gabriel Vulcan, whatever he's calling himself these days.
He took over the Shi'ar or something.
Exactly. They claimed him as their emperor or whatever. They claimed him as the emperor. And as you said, also in DC, there's a lot of stuff in DC where they keep constantly introducing new space elements and stuff like that. And I don't just mean like in the Green... Like, I've been reading a lot of Green Lantern stuff. And, so there's a lot... them going on in their own thing, and they have their own backstory, which is huge. But then they'll randomly introduce completely new races, completely new planets, new dimensions and stuff like that. And so it just seems like DC puts a little more time and care in their space stuff.
Just by creating new stuff doesn't mean they're putting more into it. They just say, like, a writer's like, I need a plot point. I'm just going to create this thing and make it, and it's going to be here and it's going to do what I want it to. Marvel does that too.
Well, what I'm saying is, for recently, over the past 5 or 6 years, it just seems that Marvel can't get away, and I would say leading up into the War of Kings, when they did try to do something new, but it wasn't, I don't think it really worked in my opinion, but it's the same 4 or 5 people in space always fighting over it.
But that's true, because they're the most powerful, empires or whatever, but you have to also remember that DC... their whole line is based on space. The main character of DC Comics, Superman, is an alien. They have to keep space at the forefront of their thing. And Superman's so powerful that there's only so much stuff on Earth that's a problem, so he has to always deal with space stuff. Marvel, though, they have much more grounded heroes, and so it's not really as an integral plot, part to do that with Marvel Comics.
I do agree with you with the part that there's only so much Superman can do on Earth, and a lot of times they have to go, well, let's send him into outer space, or let's send him to a different universe, or let's send him, somewhere else.
So, back to the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's, that trailer came out. I was looking forward to it to begin with. Now I'm looking even more forward to it. So, if you haven't seen it, you should Google it and check it out, because it's pretty awesome.
Did you catch some of the references with their profiles? Like, I know under Rocket Raccoon's, he has like a list of known associates, and one of them is it's either his girlfriend or his wife, Eula. I can't remember, but they have a lot of little like references in there. But
I didn't see some of that. No.
Yeah, I'm actually a lot of people have figured out what who some of the people are and what, like Ronan the Accuser and some other things. The only thing that I read that people were having trouble figuring out is there's apparently a giant ship in one of the scenes if you slow it down, and they weren't sure whose ship that was, who it belonged to, or if it's a pre-established, if it's an already established ship in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah. I'm not too sure. I mean, there's so much stuff it could be, and like I don't even really know what the major plot is of the movie, which I don't want to. I really don't need to know it until I go see it. Now, I think that's a problem a lot of people have with comic movies in general, is they put so much into figuring out what it's about before it comes out that when they go see it, they're just disappointed. Just don't. I'm going to go see it and go into it completely blind and stupid and enjoy it. That's the best way to see the comic movies. That's what you should do,
yeah. And I can now say that I probably, until this trailer, I had no intention of going to see this in the theater, but I think I will now.
Yeah. All right, well, on a little bit of other comic book movie news. So we've talked about this in the past, but Fox has said they were going to do a new Fantastic Four movie. But that was all we had heard, but there had been no definitive dates or names attached to it. Well, they attached some names to it this week. So,
and the internet hated on it.
Yeah, the internet hated it. So first off, if you know who 3 out of 4 of these people are, props to you, because I don't know who any of these people are. Like, I heard these names and I was like, who? But they announced that Kate Mara, who's in House of Cards, will be Sue Storm. Michael B. Jordan from Chronicle and Fruitville Station will be Johnny Storm. Reed Richards is going to be played by Michael Teller from 21 and Over and Project X. And then Jamie Bell is going to play Ben Grimm, and he was the voice of Tintin in The Adventures of Tintin, and then he was in a movie called Nymphomaniac. No idea who a single one of those people are.
I knew who Michael B. Jordan was because I had seen Chronicle several times, and I really enjoyed it. Also, Fruitville Station got a lot of critical acclaim.
Yeah, the only one of those movies or projects that I even know what they are is I know what House of Cards is. I haven't seen it, but I know it's really good. And then I saw The Adventures of Tintin. That's it. The rest of these never
was The Adventures of Tintin good?
No.
Okay.
It was mediocre at best. Like, it wasn't anything where I was like, I wasted an hour and a half of my life watching this movie. It was just kind of like, I'm glad I didn't pay money for this because I watched it on, like, HBO or something.
All right.
But, so there you go. That's your Fantastic Four.
Right. And the backlash came in multiple forms. A lot of people said that the cast was too young. As far as the age thing goes, I'm sure that Fox is trying to think ahead. They're hoping that this movie will be successful enough that they can get 2, 3, maybe even 4 Fantastic Four appearances.
But they're also doing the Ultimate Fantastic Four, right? Which is a younger group.
Which is a younger group, yes, and that makes sense. And I will say this, and I've said this 100 times before, my favorite version of the Fantastic Four was the Ultimate Fantastic Four, and I know Ellis wrote some of that. Did he write the first trade? I can't remember.
No, he wrote the second trade. He wrote he's the one who introduced Doctor Doom in the Ultimate Universe with goat legs, and everybody hated it. And then the next time he showed up, he didn't have goat legs anymore.
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
He had metal goat legs.
Well, ignore that. To me, the best version of the Fantastic Four was the Ultimate Universe. I've said this again before, but I'm just not a big Fantastic Four person. Yeah. This is definitely one I will not go see in the theater unless somebody just tells me, no, it actually turned out to be really great somehow. No. But the younger part, I understand why Fox is looking at a younger cast, but I don't know if that's going to work for them.
Well, it's not like in the original Fantastic Four when they first got their powers, they were all old people. They were all young, but you have to remember that, like, comic time is like dog years. It's like for every 7 years in comics, it's like 1 year in the actual comic world or something ridiculous. So now they're older, but they weren't that old when they first started out.
Right. In the original comic, Reed and Ben were, I think, about the same age. They were the two older ones. Yeah. And Sue was a little bit under them, and then Johnny was the youngest.
Yeah, he was her younger brother and stuff. Right. So, and they didn't have a family and everything. They were just scientists and military people or whatever that had flown off into space and got bombarded with the mysterious cosmic rays that gave them power. Yeah.
But the other backlash came because there was a lot of really ignorant people who were complaining that Michael B. Jordan, who was playing the Human Torch, is African American, and obviously with Sue Storm and Johnny Storm being brother and sister, they will either not address this issue at all, which could happen, or they will have to explain, adoption or different parents,
So I don't have a problem with one of these characters being black, but that is kind of weird that they're brother and sister and one of them, unless they explain it off, which it doesn't matter if they do or don't, but still.
It takes one line to say, well, we had different parents, or we had different fathers, or it takes one line to say, well, Johnny's adopted.
It just also seems like adopted. It just seems like one of those things where it's like one extra complication they're putting in just to upset people more.
Here's my thing. He's a really good actor, and I think he could play the role well. It was like when Donald Glover wanted to play Spider-Man. Donald Glover, to me, is a good actor. I was cool with him playing Spider-Man. And if you have to say, if you have to throw that one line in, or if you have to make that exception, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
when the Kingpin, who was Sicilian, was played by an African American individual, I thought it worked fine. I know people hate on that movie, but I didn't think he was the worst part of that movie.
Here's my problem is that I don't have a problem when they change stuff in movies based on comics because, like, well, it just works better and makes it better this way. But unneeded change and stuff like that, where you're already going to complicate it more and more. I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I'm not saying I'm not saying that, like, you shouldn't, have a black actor, but maybe you should got a black actress too. Yeah. Then that wouldn't have been cool because Sue and Reed Richards were in a relationship. And you can't have a white and a black guy in a relationship in a movie. That's why they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Well, so why don't you make Reed Richards get black? And then all of a sudden you just got, like, the Black Fantastic Four. That'd have been awesome.
Ben Grimm would be Ben Grimm would be Hispanic or something.
Yeah, I was going to say Ben Grimm would be Hispanic. That'd be great. I would watch this movie.
I would too. And I see your point.
I would be more interested in this movie than the one that they're pitching to me right now.
I see your point, and I also am of the facet that or I approve of the facet that you shouldn't change it just for the fact of changing it. Don't do it just don't do it just for we want to kind of mix things up a little bit. No,
and that's a Fox thing too. If you look, most of the Fox movies that they've done for Marvel, they change stuff. It's like, why are you changing that? There's no reason to change that. Yeah. That's why Marvel wants all these movies back because they're like, listen, you are screwing up these franchises.
And there are some things like I was explaining the other day. There's some characters like if you ever tried to make Black Panther a white dude. It wouldn't make sense.
Oh,
no. I don't even know why you would have this discussion, but I don't mind when they do this if it's based off, hey, this guy's a really good actor. There are some actors of different races that I think would play amazing roles. But just aren't they aren't considered or they aren't given the chance or whatever.
But what Fox is doing is Fox is more. They're not trying to make movies that follow the comics and play to the heart of the comics. That's what the Marvel Studios is doing because it's their properties. What Fox is doing is Fox is trying to get big name actors or up and coming actors and actresses in these movies to try to get them either more limelight for the actors and actresses they want to put in other stuff, or so they can make more money on these movies by putting these big people in it. That's the problem.
And they're trying to do two things. One, they're trying to pull in younger audiences to have audiences that will stick with them for a while. Two, Fox is trying to build their own comic book universe. They have Fantastic Four, they have X-Men, they have a ton of other stuff that's just not, they can't support their own movie with it yet, but they're trying to build their own mini universe like Marvel's done. That's why all their movies, if you go look, are they all signify the next movie. That's not just because it's Marvel. That's because Fox knows what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I think they can do it, but I think they're going to screw it up. It's like when that rumor came out that they were going to do an X-Men movie that had the Fantastic Four in it. I know that got shot down, turned out not to be true. But I almost believed that at first because that sounds like some shit Fox would do.
Well, even more so, I wouldn't doubt if they were thinking about doing it and then they saw the backlash and were like, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Because sometimes studios, companies, they'll drop these things like that out there in the public and to see what the public's response is. If the public responds positively, they'll probably follow it. But if the public's like, what? That is a terrible idea. That's so stupid. They're like, oh, no, ha, 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 that was just a rumor. That's not true. Yeah.
If you've never seen, Microsoft is famous for that, dealing with like Xbox and stuff like that. They'll release things, quote unquote, on accident or that are rumors from other sites, and then they have entire groups that watch the responses on that, and that's how they do some of their test marketing. And
in this day in social media, it's easy to do because all you have to do is like follow Reddit or Twitter, and you can just Twitter even now has this thing where you can. They'll give you data grants to research institutes, so it's not hard to get all the data from Twitter that's coming through it. And so they just follow like hashtags and certain words, and then they'll see like, oh wow, this is really people are really responding positively to this. We should pursue it. Or no, people seem to hate this idea. We should probably drop it.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
But Fantastic Four, that's your cast. I'm not going to go see that movie. I don't care.
Well, this is my thing. I'm completely indifferent. You had me, you lost me at Fantastic Four movie, and then you released the cast, and I kind of shrugged indifferently. Like I said, the only person I know who Michael B. Jordan is. I know he's a good actor.
But let
it
me
might
ask
be
you
interesting to see it for him, but the others I don't know about.
Do you go see all movies that you're indifferent towards?
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, are you likely to see this movie that you're indifferent toward?
Oh no, probably not.
Exactly. Same here.
Like if the movie comes out and somebody says no, this is amazing,
for me,
like I thought X-Men First Class was going to be horrible. I thought it was going to be bad.
I agree.
The premise.
Yep.
And then that summer came around, and 2 or 3. I follow several different critics on Twitter, and keep up with some shows and stuff like that. And they were all like, no, this is probably the best X-Men movie since X-Men 2. And I was like, well, I have to go see that now.
Yeah. And I was the same. I was very surprised, but I actually went and saw it. A friend was in town. He was like, "Hey, Early, let's see this movie. Let's go." We went and saw it, and we were cracking up because it's campy. It's 60s camp, but it's still got the comic book feel. And there were some ridiculous moments in that movie, like
right.
the quarter or the $50 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
For Kevin Bacon's head. That is like one of the most just oh my god moments in that whole movie.
Kevin Bacon was the other big surprise in that movie. I was like, who would cast Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw?
Yeah, I didn't know he was even in that movie until I started. I was like, is that Kevin Bacon?
So
is he Sebastian Shaw? But yeah, this movie right here, Fantastic Four, I didn't see the other ones in the theater. In fact, the only reason I even saw the second one was because I was on a plane flying to Las Vegas, and that was the free movie. And there was nothing else to do, so I watched it.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, and I've said it before, but I'm okay with the first Fantastic Four movie. It was bad, but it wasn't wretched. It was.
You're okay with it for that one scene where Jessica Alba's in her underwear. That's what you're okay with.
I mean, well, I'm okay with that scene, but okay, like there were parts I really liked. Like I thought Michael Chiklis, the guy who played Ben Grimm, I thought he did an amazing job.
Yeah, I didn't think he was bad at all. I mean, he's a decent actor. It was a very different role.
Yes, it was. And the other thing is, if you don't know this, he as an actor. They originally were going to do Ben Grimm as CGI, and he actually insisted that they do it as a suit. So I think he made a smart choice by sticking with his guns on that one. Mm-hmm. Chris Evans, I thought, did an amazing Johnny Storm. He found his true calling as Captain America, and I think he's a much better Captain America. Mm-hmm. But his attitude, he really, to me, was a good version of Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
For what you see in the comics. I didn't mind Jessica Alba, but she was very flat at some points.
The Reed Richards guy he was so terrible as that character. I hated him. I hated everything about him. And I hated the Doctor Doom too.
I've heard that Reed Richards was really good in other stuff, but that version of Doctor Doom was very interesting. I like that they tried to make him more like vanity and stuff like that. But I kept waiting
for him to try to have sex with everybody because he was the same actor from Nip Tuck. That's what I kept expecting, was him to start like having sex with people all the time.
I am sure that actor is great on Nip Tuck and other stuff he does. I just don't think he was a good choice for Doctor Doom.
He played a demon on Charmed, if I remember correctly, or some crazy thing on Charmed. I never really watched it. I remember he was on it.
I only watched like the first season of Charmed, so I don't think I made it that far. But that first movie is not that bad. However, when that second Fantastic Four movie came out, I think you said this earlier, but that was like an hour and a half that I will never get back in my life, and I hate that because what the hell was that?
Yeah, it was bad.
Like it actually made me appreciate the first one even more. How bad that one was, and I'm not saying Lawrence Fishburne is like some amazing actor, but that was just a wasted performance right there.
Yeah.
And Galactus, everybody hated the way Galactus was. What was he? He was like a giant cloud at the end or something like that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The concept that Galactus is this giant dude flying through outer space eating planets is kind of cheesy, but you know what? That's what it is. That's what I want. I want a giant dude flying through outer space eating planets. Okay.
You forgot he usually flies on his throne in all the original stuff.
Well, yeah, he has a ship that he uses now or something.
Yeah, I just remember in the original, like one of the first ever Avengers comics I read. Galactus shows up, and he's flying through outer space on his throne. And I thought that was so cool. But his helmet's always...
I remember in a What If comic, one of his heralds, it was what if Aunt May became a herald of Galactus.
I remember hearing about that.
And her name was Golden Oldie. That was what her name was. It was so bad. I mean, What If comics were bad. You didn't read What If comics because they were great. You read them because they were terrible.
Some of David Hines were really good. Like he did What If Civil War, which was basically the plot was what if Civil War had kind of gone a different way?
Yeah.
And that was really interesting.
Well, that's the more modern ones. The more modern what ifs were more of like, hey, what if this event did this instead, or what if this happened instead? But when there was actually a series, those comics were pretty cheesy and campy.
Like I remember, I had one that was, what if Peter Parker? Okay, because at one point in Spider-Man, he got the cosmic armor or whatever, and he was like.
Yeah,
he was punching. He was one-shotting the Hulk and everything for a while.
Yeah.
Well, there's a what if of like, what if he kept the cosmic armor? And I remember that one being really cool because basically he became a bad guy for a little while. It was interesting.
But yeah, so back to what it brought us to this point. Fantastic forecasting. There you go, guys.
We are
be excited or be indifferent. I think that's pretty much what most people are.
I think most people are going to be indifferent.
Yeah. Indifferent or hate it. I don't think there's anybody who's like, oh man, the new Fantastic Four movie, I've been waiting my entire life for this moment. No.
And if you know that person, you keep them to yourself.
If you know that person, please, for the love of God, take them outside their house for once. Just take them out to dinner. I know they're awkward in public and they really make very cringeworthy comments, but please, as their friend, it's your job to get them outside and let them understand they're wrong. Okay. So, video game wise, we have a very small little thing to talk about. Well, it's not really small, but there's really not a lot that can be said about it. But Irrational Games, which is a studio that did BioShock, they've done a bunch of other games too, like System Shock back in the day. Mm-hmm. They are closing down.
Apparently, they did SWAT 4, which I should have played.
That game was awesome. SWAT 4 is really great, but they're closing the doors. The main person, Ken Levine, the main developer for it, I'm guessing. I don't know if he has like a title CEO or something, whatever. Basically, it seems that even though Irrational Games made BioShock Infinite, and BioShock that made all this money, the games actually did not make money because they cost so much to make and market and everything. And 2K Studios, which owns Irrational Games, basically told them to close the doors. Which is kind of crazy to think that one of these possible Game of the Year contenders, studios, is being told to close the door because they didn't make any money. So
yeah, it's pretty crazy that you can have what so many people call Game of the Year and what sold very well, and yet no one is safe, so to speak.
Yeah, and one of the things that people have talked about is it might not necessarily just be the money. It might also be that Ken Levine, who's been in the industry for a while, I mean, he's done a lot of stuff. Like, didn't he used to work on... He worked on SWAT 4. You said he worked on Monkey Island also, or did he not work on that?
No, that was a joke someone was making. He worked on Thief. He worked on one of the Thief games.
Okay.
But he's been in the industry for a while doing different stuff. He's kind of done all the positions.
But some people are saying it might also be because he wants to step back from these big AAA title games because they're very stressful to make. Because there's a lot of money involved, a lot of time, and a lot of integral little parts you have to control. And he wants to make smaller games, which is what 2K wants him to do. Or Take-Two, sorry.
Right, Take-Two, yeah. I think a lot of people don't also understand how expensive AAA games have become. There's several articles out there that, especially any of the ones on Square Enix, these things are massive. They are, just straight up.
Very true.
We were talking about how much they spend on advertising, how much they spend on like product testing, the focus groups. Like, I know BioShock Infinite spent a ton of money on focus groups and
That's
stuff
not
like
even
that.
actual making the game. That's just selling the game to people, basically.
But, voice acting is expensive. BioShock has a lot of songs that they had to get the rights for, as we were talking about. There's a ton. And the thing is that because of how much it's causing these companies to boost up the number of units they expect to sell. Like, I remember the new Tomb Raider game. They said it underperformed. I mean, that game sold, I think it was like 1.7 million copies or something like that.
But the thing is, it's underselling in comparison to games like Call of Duty that basically sell 1 billion copies in the first 2 or 3 days. That's what they're thinking. They're like, oh, we can make a hot game that sells that. They're not thinking back in the old days when if a game sold 1 million copies, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, they're thinking like that, like you just said, and they're also thinking, if we're spending more money, and I've seen this in multiple articles, if we're putting more money into the game, it should be making more money. And I hate to tell them that's not a guarantee. That's not always true. So, but I agree. I think he's going to go to Take-Two. I think he's, he said that he's looking to make more narrative-driven and enjoyable games, and he's good at that. So I'm interested to see what he does, but I hate that, this has led to that studio being shut down. And something that's kind of, when a studio like this, a good studio shuts down, or, a studio that's been around for a while, a lot of what the other companies will do on Twitter and, other job search places, they'll link all their open positions.
Yeah.
And, other studios try to pick them up. And that's good because that means that's a few less people that, will have to go looking for a job.
Yeah, and for those people, too, who might have bought the BioShock Infinite season pass to the DLC, they've released one episode. There's one more episode that's supposed to come out. They are releasing that episode. It's March 25th, I believe, is the day. But the studio's not closing until it's released. So you will get that.
Yeah.
So don't feel like you're going to get, skimped on that piece. So
a lot of people were worried about that. So that's good that they addressed that.
So that's really good that they addressed that. But I hope the best for them, and I'm pretty sure that they've done some amazing games, and I'm pretty sure that we can expect to see some good stuff from Ken Levine and his crew. My other fear is what happens to BioShock, because it's still owned by Take-Two.
Yeah.
So we've already seen what happens when you make a BioShock game that's not part of the Irrational Games studio. That was BioShock 2, and it was kind of mediocre.
It was. And you know what? BioShock 2, I tried playing it again not too long ago, and
it's very hard to play after. Yeah. It's to play them like back to back, because you play BioShock 1 and it's so amazing, and then BioShock 2 it's just kind of meh, and then BioShock Infinite's amazing. I cannot imagine trying to play that after playing the other two.
Yeah. I'll say this, the controls are a little bit tighter. From BioShock 1 to BioShock 2, they up the controls and they feel much better. But yeah, I don't know. It's I'm interested to see, because Ken took 15 people with him, and those are all people that have worked with him before.
Yep.
So he'll be ready to go. As soon as they get him set up, it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I totally agree with you. That makes me wonder, well, if you're not putting BioShock in his hands, they're not just going to let the IP sit there. It made too much money for it to just, gather dust. We probably won't see another BioShock game for a good long while, because they're going to have to get a new team. They're going to have to start from scratch to a degree.
Yeah. Well, that depends. We might not see a good one. If they want to do a good one, we might not see it for a while. But if they want to go like the crap one of these out every 2 years thing, we can see one pretty quick, and they just take the BioShock Infinite engine and just change it a little bit.
Why are you trying to give me nightmares?
I'm just telling you, that's how the studio. So you're thinking of it as a consumer of video games. You're not thinking of it as a company making money off of them. If you have this title like this that makes all this money, you can just keep dumping it, and it's cheaper now because you've already got everything made for it. It's just making a new story, and story's cheap. They can get any intern to write a story for it.
No, I'm thinking of it as a guy who wants to make a good video game, and unfortunately is not concerned as much about the financial side of the company, which is why you would never work with one of these companies. That's why you have the financial side of the company and someone to tell you, hey, you can't do that. The left hand has to watch the right hand.
Yeah. A lot of these things, movie studios too, comic book companies, all these companies, as somebody who, consumes their product, you're like, oh, well, they should do this. That'd be really cool. I'd pay money, and other people pay money for it too. But then they have to think of it from their standpoint of like, well, what's cheaper? What's going to make us more money? What's going to keep us in business? Well, they thought it would keep them in business to close the studio down. So maybe they won't do another BioShock game. Maybe there aren't any more. Maybe they're like, well, they don't make enough money. Or maybe they'll be like, well, if we just didn't have to design new systems, they would make enough money.
Yeah.
So, especially if they're riding on the coattails of BioShock Infinite, they could put a piece of crap out there and people would buy it. And then they would never buy another one because they'd be disappointed. But they would make the money on the one game. Yeah. And that's the worst thing, is knowing that's what they could be doing.
And I think a lot of people are like me and unfortunately don't want to consider the financial side. And I think what may be the best for both worlds right now is maybe to let the IP cool a little bit and put some time into it. Really take their time with the game.
Yeah.
Whatever they do next. I think my new answer to how do you save this is give it to Telltale and you'll be fine.
I don't necessarily agree with that because not everything they've released has been good, and Telltale only does those kind of.
I know, yeah, it's more of a joke, but
yeah.
But like a great example is I'm really excited for the Tales of the Borderlands, and I don't know if you saw recently, but they're not going to be rushing into Borderlands 3 because they don't think it's the right time, and they want to take more time with the series and all that. So I think, I think this Tales of the Borderlands from Telltale is going to be really interesting. But maybe that isn't a horrible idea. What if they decided to take BioShock, at least for one game, and I mean one game only, and do something a little bit different? And I'm not saying you change it from being a first-person shooter to being a action point and click or anything like that, but maybe do something a little bit different inside the BioShock universe. Keeps people interested. It's a little bit refreshing, and then when your new game comes out, people are still, really gung-ho on it.
I mean, that might be an idea, but I think that kind of takes away from what BioShock is, really. I mean, if you did something different like that, I don't know how the typical BioShock player would enjoy that.
Look,
it'd be like saying, let's make Call of Duty an RTS.
Yeah.
Do you think people who play Call of Duty would want to play that? Some of them, but not most of them.
They did it with Halo, bad example probably, but
exactly,
and it was really good.
It was a good game, but I didn't. I know it was a good game because everybody I know who played it liked it, but everybody who played it was like two guys. Everybody else was like, "That's not Halo. I don't want to play that."
Halo Wars was an amazing game that I don't think enough people gave a chance. But
because that's not their Halo. Their Halo is running around shooting each other, and that's why they didn't give it a chance.
And I see your point. I guess there can only be so many lighthouses.
I guess so. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Comics and Controllers. If you want to email us any stories to talk about or any questions you want to ask us or hear us discuss, you can send it to comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter @ZombieJesus here, and they can follow you where at, Stephen?
@Stephen Wilds.
On Twitter?
Yes.
All right. So until next time, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Stephen.
Y'all have a good one. All hail the Helix Fall.